Hi everyone, very good afternoon or morning depending on where you're based. Thank you very much for joining us for this Introducing English for Academic Studies webinar. So firstly, just a few housekeeping bits of information. So we should be taking around 45 minutes to an hour of your time this morning, and that does include time for a dedicated Q&A at the end. But please be aware, if you do have any questions as we're going through, you are all on mute at the moment, but you can type that in the little question box in your GoToMeeting panel on the right-hand side, and we'll get to those questions as and when we're going through. And we will be making a recording of the webinar available as well, so you can watch it at a later date or share with colleagues. Okay, so just a little bit about the program. So English for Academic Studies is a program that we developed for kind of postgraduate master's level students to use, and it's a program. It's 7 courses. So there's an introductory course, and then there's 5 student-facing courses, and then 1 at the end for teaching English for academic purposes, and in particular how you might go about using this program as part of that. So just a couple of introductions. That's me on the right hand side. I'm Carla Whitcomb. I work in marketing for Epigeum. So Epigeum are the organisation that pulled the universities together to create this programme. And on the left hand side, that's Fiona Aish, who I will let introduce herself now.
Hello everyone, my name is Fiona Aish, as Carla said, and I'm one of the writers on the English for Academic Studies programme. Myself and my co-writer, Jo Tomlinson, we wrote the listening and the writing modules. I currently work for a company called Target English, where we are involved in EAP course writing and teaching and also testing, and I've got about 15 years experience working in EAP in various universities here in the UK.
Great, thank you, Fiona. So Fiona will be doing a presentation talking about the kind of background and her involvement to the programme and the kind of author perspective. But firstly, I just wanted to kind of go through the agenda, so what we're going to cover today. So a little look at Epigeum and the collaborative process that we use to create programmes, a little bit about the programme itself, and then I'll show you what it looks like. I'll give you a quick demonstration and then a Q&A at the end. So firstly, just a little bit about Epigeum. So we're founded in 2005 as a spin-out from Imperial College London, and as of about 6 months ago we are actually now part of Oxford University Press. And we were established as a result of kind of needing to meet some additional training needs, primarily in the kind of research and postdoc sectors, but we've actually branched out much more than that over the last 10 years. And as well as we still do our research programs, but we do a lot more on teaching and especially learning, and learning being the one that we're most interested in with English for Academic Studies. And at the moment we've got about 78 online courses across 12 different programs. And we have 5 new programmes in development. So we're very strong in the UK. That's where we came from, with a lot of UK higher education institutions using our programmes. But we're also very international now as well. And our programmes are used by 260 institutions in 29 different countries. And actually the English for Academic Studies programme was created by 24 universities from across the world. So I think we probably had about 7 or 8 different countries represented during that. And so I'll just take you through how we develop our programs, because we have quite a unique model. So when we go about building a program such as English for Academic Studies, we recruit universities to help us. So we recruit up to about 20. This was a particularly large development group. And so we bring these universities together, and they all join us for a one-day workshop, typically in London, where we discuss the course outlines and the curriculum, and everybody agrees on the programme and really helps to shape it. And then after a few months, this development group of people are then shown the kind of course outlines, and they comment on it, and they give a lot of feedback, and we get hundreds and hundreds of comments per course, which we try and include as much as possible in the programme. So it's a really iterative process, and as you can see on the third bullet point, it's a meticulous review process as well. So those universities who have sent representatives to help shape the programme get a lot of input and a lot of say to make sure it's as accurate and contextualised to their students and their university as possible. And we also recruit world-class subject authors, so such as Fiona. We go and we find the best people on the subjects that we want to create the courses in, and then we team that with our in-house experience. So we've got over 10 years of making digital products, so we're very good at that side of things, and then we recruit the best people to help us with content, as well as using the expertise of the universities in terms of best practice. And all of that comes together to build something that's really much more that's really much higher quality than a university can achieve alone. And that's all built around a pedagogically sound structure. And you'll kind of see the way that we design our courses and what they look like when I show you the programme shortly. But this is just to give you a little bit of an idea about the importance that we place on things like video footage, audio footage, and making sure that's authentic. And all of the opportunities that we have for kind of consolidating your learning through quizzes, formative feedback, reflection, etc. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a taste of how we put our programs together. I just wanted to hand over to Fiona now to take you through the kind of her involvement in the English for Academic Studies program.
What I'd firstly like to talk about is sort of why myself and my co-author Jo got involved in the project in the first place. And I think this, I could probably say, I think this is true for the other authors. All of the authors on the programme have got extensive experience in either teaching or running, managing EAP programmes, whether they're in-sessional or pre-sessional, and such are aware of the current materials, the things that are available to people, and obviously also the challenges in running and teaching on those kinds of programmes. And we were very attracted by the Epigeum platform, the flexibility of it, the way it's put together, the sort of range of the exercises, the task types, as well as the look and feel of the platform itself. And also this ability for universities and users to be able to integrate their own materials into it, so that it was more kind of, or less of a one-size-fits-all, and more something that could be specifically tailored to an institution's needs and the needs of their students. So overall, I think what we were really attracted by was the opportunity to be part of something that would meet many needs that currently surround EAP teaching. So in terms of our approach, first of all I'm going to talk to you about our approach to designing and writing the course, then a bit about the content, and then I'm going to give you some examples from the course and explain a little bit about why we chose to do some of the things the way we did. So first of all, our approach really was this starting point of flexibility. We're aware that people need to use these kinds of programs in different ways. So I really think that the English for Academic Study program allows for both classroom and self-study. It allows for larger classes, individuals, and it's very practical for both teachers and students. It's kind of bite-sized, but it does provide this scope to extend, so you could dip into it for specific kind of teaching items or learning objectives. You could have it as an adjunct onto a normal course, or you could use it as a course in its entirety. But just this sort of flexibility and practicality aspects, we were aware that we really wanted to make the most of those, and that Epigeum provides that. So it was really nice to be able to do that. The idea, one of the sort of ideas behind it was about guidance. Postgraduate students really need to take quite a lot of responsibility for their own learning at this level, and we adopted a step-by-step kind of guidance approach with a lot of the material. But the idea is also to show the students sort of the extent of the commitment that they require to their own learning. We've all sort of experienced students who are very committed to the subject that they're studying, but sometimes they can be a little bit less aware of the need to improve their English, or the impact of English and study skills on their progress on their chosen MA course. So this idea of being step by step, but saying you really need to commit yourself fully in these areas. Definitely something that we wanted to exploit, which is obviously a great part of the Epigeum programs, is the possibility of the interactive nature of the tasks and exercises, and the fact that there's such a wide range of activities. You can find some online programs where they're a little bit limited in the functionality and the range of activities. So we hope that we've really been able to exploit this aspect. We also really wanted to include this idea of independent learning, and we hope that the course fosters this by a combination of the step-by-step guidance and the range of activities to sort of show students ways in which they can improve their own learning and work on this themselves. It doesn't always have to be teacher directed, and that hopefully this kind of approach dovetails nicely with the expectations that they have on their master's courses. Their tutors and lecturers are very much expecting them to demonstrate independence of learning and independence of thought, this kind of thing. So we really wanted to integrate that aspect into the course to give it a mature focus. In terms of both of the modules that I wrote, the listening and writing, for the listening, we really wanted to use authentic lectures, which are integrated throughout the whole of that module. There's a lot of materials that kind of make assumptions about how lecturers and tutors go about presenting information in lectures. So for us it was very important to have authentic lectures that we could analyse for actual language use and delivery styles, so that the information that we're providing students is based on real lecturers, and not, as in sometimes can occur in some published materials, in sort of what English teachers think is going on in lectures. So this was very important for us, and we've got some great examples that we think would be really useful for students, and also for teachers to be able to see exactly what is going on in universities these days in different subject areas, because we don't always have access to that kind of information. So that's useful as well. In terms of the writing module, we were very keen to use model answers and have improvement tasks, so that students could either see pieces of writing that could be improved, they could try and improve themselves, but there was always going to be a model answer to show them examples of best practice in a variety of different areas relating to writing at postgraduate level. So we hope that those are also useful both for, again, students and also for teachers, being able to see these model answers, and then they can obviously exploit those further in class if they wish to. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to looking at the content for both the listening and the writing module, and some of the key things that we focused on here. So firstly, and you'll see these on the actual Epigeum course, there's a list of these bullet points at the beginning to show students and teachers what's going on in the course. But there are some key things that I wanted to pull out from this list. The first one, this idea of recognising and appreciating the challenges of listening at university and at this level. We thought that it was really important to be honest and to challenge students about how they really need to think about listening. It's more than going to lectures, even though they have the opportunity nowadays to record lectures if their lecturers are amenable to that. Then there are lots of challenges, and they really need to think carefully about how they can maximise the time that they have in lectures in order to extract as much benefit out of the experience as possible. And we didn't just focus on lectures, we also looked at listening in scenarios. They might be working with other groups of students, having to listen in groups. They may be in seminars or one-to-one tutorials. It's a range of different things that could happen well, in terms of listening. Also, there was something we really wanted to have as a focal point in this module, in all of the modules really, which is a focus on language. There are a lot of materials based around skills, and while skills and strategies are very important, this idea of language constructing knowledge, and specifically in postgraduate levels of education, and that students really need to be aware of language and how it is constructing knowledge and meaning, and how we can include activities to practice this kind of thing so that they can better benefit from their listening situations. Obviously there's the important aspect of interactivity. Nowadays the level or the amount of interactivity that happens on postgraduate courses is much higher than previously. Students are often working together on group projects and these kinds of things, and so this idea of being an effective listener in a group is very important. And then obviously we still include a lot of strategies, so we're trying to combine this idea of understanding your context, being able to use language successfully and strategies all together in order to improve and maximize your possibilities or chances of understanding as much as possible in listening situations. In terms of the writing module, some similar things here. The second bullet point again focuses on language. There's a lot that we do that focuses on features of academic writing from a linguistic perspective. But then there are obviously the slightly more difficult things for students to be able to get their head around, I think, in academic writing in terms of concepts. And the third bullet point, this idea of stance and using your voice in combination with your sources, and how do you develop your own writer's voice, which is important at this level of writing, and is something that sometimes students can really struggle with when they're not quite sure about the relationship between their own voice and the sources that they're using. So hopefully we've got some good exercises to sort of elucidate this area slightly better for them. And then, of course, there's the buzzword of criticality, which is very, very important, as we all know. So we really wanted to thread this through a lot of the exercises and tasks, this ability to be able to critically reflect on your work, and also that of others. So thinking about using sources and thinking about how to integrate those into your work, being able to kind of reflect on how you might need to improve things, which then leads into the final point about using feedback to improve academic writing. I think it's sometimes one of those, another sort of slightly difficult area. There's a lot of sort of socio-cultural aspects that come into relationships between students and tutors, and really we wanted to make sure that there was a space in the course to think about how students really need to be able to understand and use feedback that they get from their tutors, possibly from their fellow students, in order to improve their academic writing and make it the best that they can possibly do. Okay, so I'm just going to run through now some examples, firstly from the listening course. I've got a few here, screenshots from the course. I just want to show what's happening in some of these examples. So this one is an authentic lecture. I think the guy's name is Bob, professor of something to do with water resources management and engineering. It's part of an engineering program. And this is quite an interesting exercise. We like this. It's getting students to understand that it's important to pay attention at the beginning of the lecture, because usually lecturers will give some information about how the lecture is going to be structured, and this helps them identify key points, and any kind of outline or structure at the beginning should also provide them with some guidance on note-taking. So this idea of getting a handle on the structure of the information that they're about to receive. The way that this activity works is that they listen to watch the extract from a lecture, and they put the list of the 6 points here in order that the lecturer says he's going to speak about them. And the sort of idea behind this is that this is an understanding of strategy over language, because most of our students using this course are unlikely to be doing a degree in engineering and water resources management. A lot of the vocabulary here may be unknown to them, but the idea is for them to be able to listen, put the information in order, and suggest to them that they may not need to know exactly what the meaning of all of these things are. The strategy of being able to understand what's coming next and how they can organise their notes should then give them confidence, and also will then be able to highlight to them possibly as they go through things they understand better and things they understand less and may need to follow up on. And we specifically chose an example where most of our students wouldn't understand the vocabulary, just to show them how this skill is particularly useful. Then obviously there's follow-up activities on this about the language that the lecturer is using to introduce the order of topics, etc., etc. This is very much like that sort of a macro kind of skill and focusing on a skill, but it's a way of also using an authentic lecture to show students that, you know, this has not specifically been written in a slightly easy way for English language students. It's a real thing, and it is possible for you to navigate this kind of information. So that was really the aim behind an activity like that. The is an example of the language aspect. So here the section is about how lecturers give definitions, and there's a series of grammatical structures which are explained with examples, and these are the types of language and phrases and grammatical structures that lecturers may use. Now obviously it's not an exhaustive list. We have pulled these out of the authentic lectures, the ones that those examples that we had, those lectures were using these grammatical structures, and this is hopefully highlighting to students that they need to be aware of these kinds of things, because obviously definitions are very important. They're constantly going to be learning new ideas, theories and pieces of vocabulary, so they really need to get a handle on if a definition is being explained to them, if it's key, etc., etc. So yeah, this is an example of this kind of activity, and it comes from a lot, I think, and the authors, when we were all discussing approaches and materials and things, one of the things that came up amongst everybody was that in a lot of EAP materials there can be a tendency to sideline language because it can be quite complex. There are some things that appear quite a lot, but they tend to be a list of grammatical structures, like using the passive or using constructions, and you think, well, what we wanted to do was really look at what kind of language lecturers were actually using and saying, well, this structure is useful because lecturers use it in order to do this, and this is important for you. So trying to make those connections between language and understanding is behind these kinds of activities. Okay, so moving on to the next one. This is one of my favourites, the kind of comic book stories. And this activity here is a scenario, and it's a group of students having a discussion about their lecture, and they're talking about a lecturer that they're not sure if the lecturer is really interested in us or the topic. They go on in the discussion to talk about the lecturer's voice being a bit flat, and they're not really sure whether they're kind of getting much out of being in the lecture. And then the task is obviously for students to think about how students in the story can go about solving this dilemma or this context that they're in. And really what we wanted to do with some of these kinds of student stories in the graphic novel format was to present real life scenarios that students come up against, and that they are a bit difficult. They may not just be about language or about understanding their course. They could be more social or culturally based, and we wanted to be able to include some of these things so that students had the experience of thinking about it and discussing it prior to or during, at the beginning maybe, of their course, with the idea of promoting student discussion. Don't worry about these kinds of problems, don't hide if you don't understand things. Use your other students as a resource and discuss this and see how you can solve some problems that you may come across in the listening scenarios. Okay, the final one, which is a listening example, And this is a sort of a slight extension of the listening, because it's about organising your notes and using sound files. We very much textualise the idea of listening within the wider university experience. You know, why do you listen? Well, you go and you listen to get information. That information you need to then read up on afterwards and feed it into probably some kind of writing assignment. And so this is an example of how organising notes can help with that process, because going to the lecture, this lecture information is going to, the student's going to need it to do something. So we've got examples here of how the student has got dates and times. One of the bullet points has got a timing on it so that they can go back into their sound file when they recorded the lecture and listen to it again. And these various little orange points just point out ideas that students could take on board for, you know, good study skills, good approaches, the idea of best practice in some of these areas. So we're really trying to cover both in all of these skills, real-life situations, language, all contextualized within authentic lecture. Okay, so just for the last section, I now want to talk about the writing. So here, the first example I have for you is a language example. So we have an extract from an essay with the little orange balloons again, giving students information about aspects or features, grammatical features that we find a lot in academic writing. So it's a focus on this in a model essay. And again, the idea is to really show the students the importance of language and how language is constructing meaning here. We would hope that for the teachers, they would then be able to use something like this as a jumping off point to, you know, how, for example, here we've got noun phrases, how noun phrases are constructed. They could do further exercises on that kind of thing. One of the examples is using a reporting verb. Again, a jumping off point for teachers to think about how to kind of get students to understand that their choice of reporting verb is one way that they can include their voice and their stance about something. So by using a model answer like this and drawing out the key features, it sort of functions as like a springboard into as much further work as the teacher or the student studying individually would like to do. Okay. The second writing example I have here is about criticality, and this is more of a sort of an information input activity. There are some things that we thought it would be very useful to give input on for students so that they can try and understand a little bit more about some of the more difficult concepts, and obviously criticality is one of them. So this exercise has a brief description about how criticality works in the three large subject areas of science, the arts and social sciences, and it's just a little discussion on how it functions, what students need to do to demonstrate it in their written work, and how difficult it might be to do this kind of thing. The activity then goes on to include some student scenarios and some student work, and the idea is for students to work on how these students in the examples could improve their criticality. So this is very much sort of coming from the test, the sort of present information and then practice approach to teaching, giving students some information and then showing how they can apply this to examples, then by extension how they can apply this in their own work. Okay, and the final example that I have is about feedback. Now, I mentioned that earlier, that we really wanted to try and include feedback quite a lot in this, and it crosses, you know, both sort of cultural, real life and academic kind of aspects, I think, of university study. This activity asks students to match the tutor comments with the type of feedback that it's the category of feedback that the tutor is giving, and then goes on to explore what this might mean. It's something that I think there can be a lot of misunderstandings between students and tutors in terms of what feedback is supposed to do, and so we really want to give students a space on the course to learn more about this and to play around with some of these ideas, but also to sort of prepare them for the kinds of things that they will be encountering on their course. Definitely a teacher can do an awful lot with this, we think, and in terms of unpacking some of these phrases, looking at whether or not they're particularly strong. For example, the phrase, you have omitted some key theories excuse me, in this area, is likely to mean that the student needs to go back and include some more. The tutor has sort of couched this in quite a polite way of giving feedback, and so there's a lot of things that I think that come under the area of politeness in feedback that we have the responsibility of sort of unpacking for our students. So we really hope that we were able to do this on this aspect of the programme. So at the end of my section, hopefully the examples have given you a little bit of a flavour of the materials and where teachers and students might go with this, and some of the key things that we were focusing on, as I said, authenticity and model answers, language, study skills, and also real life situations and contexts.
Share my screen with you and you can see hopefully there the English for Academic Studies programme in its portal, and so just wanted to show you, you can see there, this is what it looks like when it's hosted by Epigeum. Actually what most universities do is they actually take the materials, take the courses and put it in their own virtual learning environments, and that makes it easier to customise and things like that. So most people do that, but this is what it looks like here. And as you can see, this is the two different pathways that it's available in that you can see. So you've got the more traditional skills-based format there on the left-hand side, and then you've got the thematic design on the right-hand side that you might want to use. And typically you just pick one that's more suitable for your institution. So I'll just take you through the demo and then we can come back to some of the questions I know that are coming through. So here, this is the penultimate screen of this introductory course. And I'll highlight a few features that you can see that are kind of relevant to all of our programs, and this one in particular. At the beginning, we always have a screen challenge and learning objectives laid out here. And that's so that your students are aware of what they should be learning from this particular screen. And we also have an estimated screen duration time. So here you can see it's 12 minutes. So again, they have an idea of how long it's likely to take them to work through this screen. And they do vary in length throughout the programme. And for English for Academic Studies, obviously they're quite rough estimates because a lot of the users will be reading in a second or possibly even a third language. And also they only apply to the main screen content. So you might have seen these little boxes on the right hand side here, and they have a lot of other information that's not included in that screen duration. So as Fiona was saying, we try to use as much authentic video and audio material where possible. We've gone around to as many of those 24 universities that helped us build the programme as possible, recording real life students and staff in lectures, tutorials, seminars, and real students having directed discussions. So we also have got recordings of students in there reading scripted materials, as well as interviews from a variety of international universities as well. So the screen that you can see here is about using assessment to improve English performance. And we start here with some information, so you can see here a little bit of information about the assessment before you then move on to something more practical. So here you're assessing a student's performance in two speaking tests, and you're giving context and instructions to help you complete this activity. So you can see here there's a download pod where you can download some material that's going to help you in this activity. And here you can see that we've got Kelvin's first speaking test as an audio. And so users listen to him talking about a job he finds interesting, and this is an authentic, unscripted piece. And after listening, the user responds to questions by writing their answers in the space provided. So here, you write it down here, and then you view the feedback there for information on their notes. And then you read a little bit more information here and go on to look at a second version recorded after Kelvin has taken more English courses, and then follow the same note-making strategy. And then the user is given an opportunity to apply the principles of the speaking evaluation to their own writing. And they can download the relevant information from the second pod, which you can see. I scroll up here. So they can download this information. And also this audio, we always have transcripts available for our audio, so you can see that there. And all of the interactive screens that you can see are compatible. We have a flat text version, so that they're compatible with screen readers and are useful for anyone who's unable to use this interactive version for any reason. And the final thing I wanted to show you on this page is this little portfolio activity. So these appear on different screens to allow users an opportunity to develop their learning by doing some extra tasks. And Word documents provided. So the user, when they're doing their portfolio activities, you can see you can download the document there. They're provided in all of the portfolio activities. So you can actually build up a hard copy of your Word documents as you're going through. So in this particular portfolio activity, the task asks the user to make a list of priorities for improving their English writing. And again, you get instructions in the attached information as well. So I'll move on to this screen, which is about why listening is important at university. And you'll see that the main student-facing courses, of which this is one, they all have specific skill-specific learning objectives, as well as vocabulary objectives at the top of each screen. So you can see those there. And in the first paragraph here, you can see another feature of this program, which is the pop-up glossary. So here you click on the highlighted words and it reveals their definitions. We also start this screen with a close activity to allow students to think about different aspects of listening by completing sentences with words from a drop-down menu. So you can see that you pick the one. And this introduces them to some key terms that they're going to need to consider throughout. And then here's a nice graphic video note-taking activity, which gets users to consider different kinds of listening situations they might find themselves in. So here they listen to a real student, Anna, who's discussing some scripted situations. And once you've listened to that, we have a note-making activity here that asks them to reflect not only on the listening experiences of Anna, but on the kinds of listening they may experience themselves on a typical day. And it's a usual feature of this program that audio or video material is followed by an activity that gets the user to focus on actually learning something from what they're watching and listening to. So that's the way we tend to structure our screens. And we have some more interactive activities. So here we've got a matching activity that requires the user to look at descriptions of different types of listening here and match them to their correct functional context. And the pop-up glossary that you just saw has already given them these definitions, so it can help them with this activity. And it helps them think in more details about the types and purposes of listening at university. And the final activity on this screen is asking students to assess their own abilities by considering how difficult they find some of the situations on screen. So as well as the portfolio activity that you've just seen, we also have this useful advice pod here as well, and that gives further information or tips. And we've also got a video pod here, so we do obviously have a lot of video in the main footage, but here we've got some in a pod with a number of students talking about experiences of listening while studying in English. Okay, so I wanted to just move on to this one that talks about the role of the user as a writer and some of the activities that we've got on this page. So this first one is a tick box activity. So it gets you thinking about what do you already know about your role as a writer, or what do you think you know? And then they get feedback on the question. So if I say, yes, I should make sure that my work is clear, you get the feedback there. And you go through completing that as you go. And we also here have a matching activity. It's just a simple way of getting the user to think about some vocabulary related to writing before they go on to the rest of the screen in a bit more detail. And here we've got a label graphic, so similar to the one that Fiona was showing you, a bit more of a presentational activity. So here, the first version is a clear, accurate paragraph, and you can click on the pinpoints that explain why. And then below it, you've also got an unclear paragraph. And then again, if you click on the little orange markers, it's an explanation as to why that's perhaps more unclear than the original one. And this gives tips on how the paragraph can be improved. And this here is plain text, but throughout the course it might be that you could have a handwritten style document here, based on a student's notes. And then you get an activity where you think about how you can improve the paragraph. So you've been given the strategies on screen, you've given advice in the pinpoints, so now you're going to think about how you might look to improve that paragraph. And there's only one pod on this screen, but it's a Your Context pod, and these are really interesting. So we touched briefly on the fact that you can customize the content, you can add and remove screens and make it a lot more tailored to your context. And here in its default mode, it's saying to you, okay, check your course or module handbook for information on word count rules. But actually what we encourage universities to do is actually put the links directly in there to those word count rules, so you know that your student has access to the information that they need, and it's also a lot more of a personalised experience for them. So another feature of these student-facing courses are these summary screens. So they include the list of screen challenges. So if we go and have a look at those, you can see they've got the list of screen challenges that they've covered in that particular unit, and it allows the user to remind themselves of the materials covered, and also there are some activities to test and revise this learning. So this is the last screen of the reading unit. This is the reading unit summary. And it begins with these series of panels that they click through that you've just seen to have a look at those screen challenges. And then we've got a classification activity. So again, just looking to see if you've got the right activity, and you don't actually know during this activity if you have the right or wrong answer until you've finished. So it's just a little bit of a way of making it a little bit more tricky. And the final thing I wanted to show you was a screen from the teaching course. So I briefly mentioned we've got one that's aimed at teachers for English for academic purposes, and it can help you to develop existing skills or to help think about new ones. And obviously we offer suggestions of how you might work with this particular program. And the principles are very much the same as the student-facing one that I showed you. So again, you're looking at some flat text and some presentational ways of looking at chunks of information. And then you get a click to view more activity. So the user is provided with information and then consider their own responses before looking at the feedback here. And we've also got a classification entry here of activity, and there are 3 columns, each headed by a different observation criteria, and examples of classroom practices at the top here. And you simply match the practice with the correct criterion and start thinking a bit more detail about different classroom practices and how they can meet the observation criteria. And also on this page we've got a little video here which is an extract from a classroom session where users are invited to think about the criteria that they've been looking at on this screen so far in relation to these extracts that they're watching in that video. And then they can download and complete this little observation form here. Okay, so that's just a little bit of a run through of the program. Hopefully that gave you a little bit of a taste of how it looks like in practice, some of the activities. I'm kind of building a little bit on the examples that Fiona showed to you. So thank you ever so much for taking the time to come and come along to the webinar. I hope you found it useful. Thank you very much to Fiona as well for your presentation.
Thank you very much for listening, everyone.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.